I was not.
Okay.
Me either.
Okay. So just to let you know, this is a continuation of accommodation. If you want to check out the last webinar, it is on our YouTube channel. And if you need that information, you can always email me at james@emergentdt.com. Let me put that into the chat here. So in that video, we talked a lot about the principles of accommodations and some of the theory. And now we've been entering into getting into actually some of the activities. So those of you probably maybe already have the theory and all you want is the activity. So if that's the case, you'll be fine to catch up right where we're at. But if you want to go back and look at some of that material, you'll be welcome to.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're about 5 after, so we'll go ahead and get started. So accommodation, as I looked at it when I first got into vision therapy, it seemed to me that it was the most magical as far as for me, like how does something just become clear? And I have very poor eyesight. I have a lot of astigmatism. I have a lot of minus. And so all growing up in my life, everything was kind of blurry. In fact, the first pair of glasses I ever got, I was 7 years of age. We were driving home from the optometrist's office and I had my new glasses on and I looked out the window. My dad was driving and I was like, "Dad, look, trees." And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "They have leaves." And he was like, "Yeah, trees have leaves." And I was like, "No, there's individual leaves. I just thought they were all part of this great big blob. And then when they fell off the tree, you had a leaf." So it was interesting when I got into studying about accommodation, about how this system works. Okay. And I don't want to go back into all the things that we've previously discussed, but I want us to still be aware that that lens, okay, that crystalline lens that is in there, that as light is coming through that pupil and entering into that eye, depending on if that lens is relaxed or if it's flexed, it's going to determine the weight, the length of that light that's coming in. And we want that light to always hit right at the back of the retina, right upon that fovea, the macula area. And that is where we're going to have the clearest vision. Okay. And so every time that we think about these activities, it's with the mindset of, are things clear first? But then secondarily, and sometimes even more in the primary realm, is how does the patient feel? What did they do to either make it blurry or to make it clear, and can they manipulate those back and forth? So we've already covered a little bit about flex and relax, look hard, look soft, keeping our periphery, how much our periphery is a part of this. And so now going into continuing with the activities, we ended off with bullseye. And here we have a simple bullseye. And I talked to you about with young children, I make up these little tiny pictures. I have little safaris that we go on. And as they're going around the room, their job is to look through the bullseye to the target, make the target clear, then flex their accommodation, come back to the bullseye, make it clear, then relax their accommodation back out, make the object that they're looking at or the animal that they're looking at clear again, and then they captured that animal. They can now go put it on the board and match that picture. So with accommodation, there's the flexing of accommodation. There's also the relaxing of the accommodation and making sure that they can feel the difference, that they can understand that they can only make one place clear on that Z-axis. And so it's important to know how their eye feels when they're relaxed out to look far and when they're flexed to look in. Okay. Now, I also talked about how you can do bullseye with not just the bullseye, but I like using a clear near far heart chart. And any of you have a Sanit Vision integrator?
No.
No. Okay,
No.
so those of you that do, you can go into your settings under ocular motor, and you can go into saccades, okay? And underneath it has words. You can pick words, and I pick a white background with black letters, and you can set up words, and I usually use the 5th grade reading sheet list, and then it you can put about 20, 25 of them out there. And this way you can, use a patch, and they have to look through the heart chart to the letters and spell it, then clear the heart chart, and then relax back out to the letters, spell the word backwards, and then use the word in a sentence. So this way you have they're clearing through, they're flexing in, they're relaxing out, and each time they're spelling, you're making sure that things are clear, and then you have a cognitive load at the end of it, okay? So don't be trapped into thinking that you just have to use the bullseye. You can also use a clear chart, but your goal is to get them to feel, what does it feel like when they're near, or what does it feel like when they're far, okay? So now, going on, let's go to the, let me see what it's doing to me. There we go. So lens sorting, this is a just noticeable difference activity. So if you've ever remember working with wedge prisms, and you usually would do this activity monocularly, just like you would do the wedge prisms monocularly. And with the wedge prisms, as you put them in, you're wanting them to notice what movement was happening, where the image was moving to. Could they have the proprioception with their eye of where their eye was moving to track that? And then how small of diopter you could get to before they lost that just noticeable difference. This is going to be the same activity in the fact that you're looking for that just noticeable difference, but we're going to be working with accommodation. So I will take a clear chart, or I will take a white chart, make it opaque, and then set it on the table in front of them. And usually I'll have a cloth there or something that's soft, because we're going to be using lenses. And you're going to want to make sure that you have a translucent occluder that you're able to see the opposite eye, okay? And why that is important is as they are accommodating, okay, they're going to be working that accommodation system. You want to see what the patched eye is doing. Whenever we do accommodation, we have to remember that near point triad, okay? And we need to remember that there is the AC/C ratio, okay? So accommodative convergence and convergence ratio. So as my eyes accommodate, there's a natural tendency to converge, okay? So whatever eye is going to do the accommodation, you should see pupil constriction, okay? It's going to be constricting during accommodation. And then the patched eye, you should see it go slightly nasal, okay? So you should see a little bit of that convergence wanting to kick in, even if you have this set up so this eye is looking straight on and there's no convergence going in. Because of that AC/C ratio, you're gonna see that patched eye do a little bit of movement towards the midline, towards the nasal. Now, when I say a little bit, you want this because as you're going on, the more minus later on in your therapy session, when you get into monocular flipper reading, when you get to split pupil rock, when you get to walks middle minus, and some of these other activities, you want to make sure that as you're dropping in minus in front of the one eye, monocular eye, that patched eye doesn't just over converge, okay? We don't want the accommodation system to be reliant upon the vergent system to where the vergent system is over converging to pull accommodation in, because accommodation is actually lagging in space. So once you have it set up, they have their patch on, they got you're able to see that other eye. I take a range of lenses. Usually I'll have a -+25, a -+50, a -+1, and then I'll skip to a -+150, a +2, -2, and then probably maybe a plus 250. Not rarely do I go above that, and then maybe a -3 or a -4. So just enough diopter difference each time to give a little bit of change, that just noticeable difference. Now, you may have to adjust that depending upon your patient, okay? Sometimes they're not going to be able to see that quarter diopter between a -20.25 or a plus 0.25. So you may have to start with a wider jump, okay? But then work towards getting to these smaller increments. And as they're laying out, you put them out. I use the trial lens set. I'm not in the office today. I'm actually at the fire department, so I don't have my trial lens set with me. But we just use the trial lens set, and you know, it has the handle. It has either plus symbol or the minus symbol. We just use painter's tape and tape it up. And so we tape all the ends up, and then we kind of mix them into a pile. And then what they're going to do is, I'll just use a blank lens. For example, as that heart chart is laying on that paper, what they're going to do is, they're patched here, they're going to introduce each lens in front of their eye. And as they do it, you want to begin to ask the following questions, okay? First of all, you just say, what do you see? Okay, it's really important that at the beginning, they just be able to talk about what they see differently, okay? And the goal is that they begin to see, if we remember back to silo, small in, large out, that works with base in, base out, like with vectograms, but it also worked with lenses, okay? So if we put a minus lens in front of somebody's eye, they should be able to recognize that it makes things smaller, okay? And they should also be able to recognize that it brings things closer, okay? So it's small in, meaning they have to flex their accommodation, they feel that. Or if you put a plus lens in, they should be able to feel that things got bigger, that it moved away from them, large out, and they should feel that their eye begins to relax, okay? So as they're inserting and taking these lenses out, I ask them, I want you to put all the lenses that make the chart look bigger on your right side, and all the lenses that make your chart look smaller on the left side. That way now they have larger side and smaller side. And if they have a problem with understanding that concept of silo, one of the things that I talk to them about is, what's 2 plus 2? Just a simple math problem. What's 2 plus 2? And they'll say 4. And I'm like, that's exactly right. So whenever you have a plus symbol, you always have more. You have more size and you have more distance. And we've already taught flex and relax. We've already taught them bullseye of looking farther is less effort. Looking close is flexation or more effort. So they already understand that. So now we're really instructing them on that silo effect. 2 plus 2 is 4. You're going to have more size and more distance. So you're going to have to relax your eye. Minus, you're always taken away. So things are smaller and you're taking away space. So your eye is going to have to accommodate, are going to have to flex in. Now that they have their plus on one side and their minus on the other side, are the ones that look bigger, the ones that look smaller, then I have them put them in order. Okay, so now you're going to take all these ones that you said that look smaller. I want the one that makes it look the absolute smallest, and they gradually get bigger. And then when you get to the end of those, you're going to take these big ones over here, and on the far right side, make the one that's absolute biggest, and then coming down until they're smaller, to where we have the one that makes it smallest on one side and the one that makes it the largest on the other side, and that they can begin to look and be able to tell those differences. Then we unwrap them and just see if they have them in that diopter order that matches, okay? Now, one thing that you want to look at is, as they're doing this, you want them to begin to experiment. So they can put this in, okay, and they can kind of trombone it a little bit. They can shake it. Those are things that can add to dynamics to it. You can give them a pointer or a pencil, and as they're looking, they can try to tell where that is in space. We'll get to a little bit more to that when we get to split pupil rock. But the main thing is you don't want them to put that lens clear up right by their eye, because on those, some of them is going to be a lot too much accommodation, right? You don't want them to hold it right down at the paper, okay? What you want to do is right about Harmon's distance is good,
is to enter it in, but do that consistently with every single one. Because if you have a +1, okay, and you hold it up here really close to their eye, but the next time you take a +1 and you hold it out at Harmon's distance, it's going to look different because you're adding an add to it. You're making it more. The farther you take it away from the eye, it's adding plus to that lens in a concept, okay? And so you want them to introduce it at the same time. Once they've been able to look, you go back and you look through and you see, okay, we got all of them right, except these two are different, okay? So let's take those two and let's compare them. Let's go back and let's do a comparison and see if they can tell the difference between that. Then you're going to flip the patch and do the same with the opposite eye, and they can compare back and forth. They can bring them back and forth, but you just want them to get used to seeing that just noticeable difference and then start to feel the difference. Okay, if I have a -1, I feel that flex. If I put a -2 in there, do I feel more of a flex? Do I feel like I'm working harder with that -2 than I do that -1? So this is a great activity for them to really get used to how their eyes feel as they're accommodating. Okay, anybody have any questions on that? If you do, feel free to reach out to me. All right, so now let's go on to using just near far heart chart. Okay, so here's a near chart, and we've all seen the OFNP chart. Okay, you're going to put one on the wall, the larger one on the wall. It's going to be out there, and then I usually bring them back to where, as they're looking at that chart, about 10 feet is great if they can get that far back, but you want them to feel like their eye is totally relaxed as much as possible and that they feel like they can still make it clear, okay? We don't want it to be blurry in the distance. We want them to be able to have this as a clear. Now, you've already been using heart chart for an ocular motor activity, so they should be kind of used to using that heart chart. I'm not too worried about them having it memorized or having them, you know, that they're kind of know where the chart is going, because now we're going to talk about them knowing if the letter is clear or not clear. Okay, so if they have the chart memorized and they know where they're going to look, this is just going to lower that cognitive load so that they can spend a little bit more cognition on the feeling of their eye and clarifying if it's clear or not clear. Okay, so now they come back, you're going to, again, you want to use that translucent patch so that you can see the eye, whatever eye that you end up patching. You can find many people that have different ways of where they should hold this chart. Some will have them hold it just like a, you know, hang loose, you know, just right off their chin. I tend to hold it just a little bit farther out, because remember, the closer something comes to their eye, the more they're having to accommodate. So their amplitude is ratcheted up, okay? And what's at Harmon distance compared to what is here at, you know, 15 centimeters or whatever, there's a big difference in that, okay? So I want to start more where they're going to be a little bit more comfortable until they get the feel of flex and relax and can control it a little bit more, than to start right where I want them. The other thing is, I try, and nowadays in society, I'm trying to get more and more of my students to not hold anything this close and try to accommodate it. I'm trying to reinstill, hey, let's hold things out here, whether it's a phone or a book or whatever it is. Yeah, I may be able to get them to accommodate up here, but I really want them to accommodate more here at Harmon's distance. Now, all your activities, you're going to be just doing the same across, outside in, columns, however you want to do it, but they're going to do one line out, then one line in, and then one line out, and then one line in, okay? And so there's that rotation. So now we've worked on amplitude, how much they can bring their accommodation in. This is working more on flexibility. Can I bring that in and then relax it back out? Can I bring it in and relax it back out? And I talk to them about how their eye feels when it's relaxed. How does their eye feel when it's flexed? And can you recreate that feeling? Because if they come in and they clear this near chart and then they look to the far chart and they say, oh, it's kind of blurry, I'll ask them, does it feel the same as when you had it clear? And if they can identify and say, oh, no, it doesn't. And then I tell them that means you're probably accommodating somewhere in space. So let's try it again. Let's relax our eye out and think about looking through the chart, through the bullseye, because we've already done that, and feel what it feels like when your eye is totally relaxed. Ways that you can increase difficulty is, of course, the distance from the big chart. The farther you get away from the big chart, the more jump they're going to have for relaxing, okay? Or decreasing the distance of the near chart. If I'm here and I bring it into here, I've just added a lot of accommodative load. As with all of our activities, if we want to then begin to load it, we can do it with a metronome that's going to add that timing, just like we did with the ocular motor. As they begin to make that accommodative jump, to make it within that beat's time, okay, so that we work on the flexibility, but the speed of flexibility. How fast can I get my eye to relax out? How fast can I get my eye to come in? And then you can do any of the cognitive loads, adding words. You can have them, you know, say different words for different letters. Any way that you would have loaded the ocular motor activity, you can start to load this activity, but we're really working on the clarity and making sure that they can feel that flex and relax. Okay, lens magic. Now, this is an activity that is a lot of fun, and if you can do it, I'm going to move here just a little bit so that I can set up a Marson ball. All right, can everybody see me still? Or do I need to adjust?
I could see you.
I
Okay.
see you.
All right, has everybody done split pupil rock?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
most people have. Okay, so I won't go through all the technical part of it, but I will go through a couple of things. Again, you're gonna want them to have a patch, okay? The translucent patch is still gonna allow them to have some periphery, but it's gonna take that central vision out of the eye that you're not working with right now, okay? So as I introduce, we're gonna pretend that I have a patch on this eye. As I begin this activity is to teach flex and relax. It's also to teach that Z-axis, is to teach silo, all the different aspects of what I want them to understand about their visual system, okay? So the very first thing that I want them to do is just to take that lens and cover the ball, okay? Take that lens, cover the ball. Again, I'm using right about Harmon's distance. I'm not wanting it clear up here. I'm not holding it out here, just about Harmon's distance, and then just see what happens to the ball. So the very first thing that I'm looking for is size recognition. They see the difference in size, okay? So then as they get that and they enter that ball, that lens in, okay, they can shake it, they can move it a little bit, and they say, oh, it's smaller, now it's bigger, okay? The next is gonna be what we call tromboning. So they're gonna push that lens out and then pull that lens in. Push that lens out and pull that lens in. And as they do that, they're gonna recognize, as I push this lens out, the ball gets bigger. As I pull this in, the ball gets smaller. So I'm preloading them to understand silo. That as I push the ball away, it gets bigger. As I pull the ball towards me, it gets smaller, okay? Now, that is all done with only one. So we haven't split the pupil yet. We haven't created that double image yet, okay? So now the next thing we're gonna do is they understand things get bigger, things get smaller. So now, as they bring it in, we're gonna ask them, I'm sorry, the fire thing is going off, so hopefully it doesn't distract us too much. They're going to create two images, one that is outside the lens and one that's inside the lens. And from there, I want them to just shake that lens just a little bit and begin to ask them, which one's closer? Is the one outside of the lens or the one inside the lens? Now, here's where you don't want to get too much in a hurry. We know silo, small in, large out, it's a fact, right? So they should be able to see that the smaller image that is in the lens is closer to them. But that goes so against what we call perspective, or what we have in everyday life. So a lot of times these individuals, these patients, they haven't learned to trust their visual system. So we're trying to set up new ways for them to get visual information in a new way, so that they can begin to trust their eyes, begin to really believe what their eyes are telling them. So at first they may say, well, that one's bigger, and so that one's closer, right? This one's smaller because it's farther away because it's smaller. Go back to putting it over, tromboning, okay? Feeling as I push away, it gets bigger. As I pull towards me, it gets closer, okay? Split that off, and then just shake it just a little bit. And that little bit of dynamic will help the magnocellular system, our wear system, could kind of pick it up, because right now we're working with our accommodation, which is parvo. I understand that, but they're not one or the other. They work in sync, okay? And so our magnocellular system helps us to know where something is spaced, so that we can then thereby make it clear. So have them shake it a little bit, and then ask them, look at the one that's outside the lens. Is it clear? And those should be able to say, yes, it's clear, because they're looking at it. So while you're looking at that outside ball and it's clear, what is the inside ball, the one that's in the lens? Is it clear or blurry? Well, they're going to say blurry. And so now you can go back and talk about how you can only clear something at one place on the z-axis. So now look at the one inside the ball. Okay, can you make it clear? Yeah. What's happened to the one that's outside? Well, it's blurry. And if you have one of the Martian balls that has letters on it, or you can take one of these and put a white balloon on it and write letters on it, they're going to be able to see that blur factor, and they can begin to understand, okay, they're not at the same place. Okay, one's clear, the other's blurry, this one's clear, the other one's blurry. They're on a different place on the z-axis. Then you can begin to say, okay, now look at the one that's outside the lens. Does your eye, as you make that clear, does your eye feel flexed, or does it feel relaxed? Now look at the one that's inside the lens. Can you make it clear? Yep. Now, does your eye feel different? And they're going to begin to feel the difference in their eye and feel, oh, when I look at the one in the lens, I'm flexing my accommodation. Therefore, I must be looking closer. When I look at the one outside the lens, I'm relaxing my accommodation. Therefore, it must be farther. And so now, as they begin to shake, they can begin to sense that. And the last thing is you bring in a pencil or a pointer or whatever you want, and you can begin to have them localize where in space they feel that ball is. Now, you want to be careful. If they bring their hand into the realm of the lens, it's kind of harder for them to judge. So you want them to just kind of reach out here on the side and in their periphery. Where do they feel that lens is, or that ball is? And it's right about here for me. Okay, so they're feeling this one here is closer. Okay, now you can do this with various sizes of targets. You can do it with different parts. Set this back up. So you can begin to help them, okay? And I usually use like a -5 is a great diopter lens. You can add different lenses. You can do it with a -2, you can do it with a -3, but a -5 is the one that I find that's really is easier to do, okay? Any questions on split pupil rock?
No.
Okay. You can move from that into monocular minus lens distance rock. It's pretty much the same as near far heart chart, except instead of you using the small chart as your near point, you just use a lens. So you have two lenses, they split it, they have the big chart out here, they have the little chart in here, and you just have them go through back and forth. The main thing is, as you're doing any of these activities, make sure that the patient can tell the feeling, okay? It's all about them being able, it doesn't matter how often they can clear it and it seems like it's clear, but they should be able to tell you what their eye is doing to make that clear. All right. Probably the most foundational and long-lasting monocular activity that we do is monocular flipper reading, okay? And so we use a slant board and put letters, words or whatever they're reading. And then all they're gonna have is their patch because we're doing it monocularly. And then you're gonna use your flippers, okay? And as they go through, they're gonna just hold that flipper and they're just going to go back and forth. Now, things to think about as they're doing this. We've already done just noticeable differences. We've looked through flex and relax, okay? What we want to do is, first of all, I'm not trying to teach them reading right now. I'm not so much even working on ocular motor right now. Right now, I'm working on accommodation. So whatever their reading level is, I usually go way below that reading level. So I'll use Dr. Seuss books. I'll use easy reader books. I'll use some of the Disney books. You know, I'm not really wanting them at reading level because I'm trying to take that cognitive load down until we just work on, is it clear on the plus side? Is it clear on the minus side? Do they feel what their eye is doing? People can do this different ways. I'm just telling you the way that I kind of do this is you can start at a high flipper level. Like I know some clinics, they start at a +-2. And if the patient can't do it, then they move their way down until they find one that the patient is comfortable with, okay? That's between, you know, whatever your practice is, your doctor's practice, however they want you to do it. What I have found is because I'm not trying to teach, is it clear, is it not clear, and that's it, is I start at a minus plus quarter diopter, okay, 0.25. And the reason is I want them to feel the difference between the two. Now, they may go really rapidly up to that ±2 that I'm trying to get to, but I want them to go through those steps so that each time as they're going, they're getting a greater awareness and they're knowing, and I don't have to worry about any gaps that are going through there. Remember, kind of like in algebra, what you do to one side, you want to do the other. So after you've done some, you want to flip it over and do the accommodation on the opposite side. And as I'm doing accommodative work, at the end of any accommodative activity, I want them to stop. I want them to look far. I want them to open up their periphery. I want them to relax those eyes back out. So even though they're doing accommodation, make sure that as they're doing their accommodation, and we'll cover this a little bit in the next one, is they're doing a real central activity. They're doing a real central activity with their flipper, but I still want their periphery to be nice and open. And the reason is we're going to see here. Let me see. Oh, let me cover this first. One of the most important therapies to establish monocular basis of accommodative skill. This activity affords plenty of opportunities to discuss silo. You can have them kind of feel where they think that those lenses are going to be. And then where am I trying to get them to is because they're monocular, you can go to a plus about 250. Remember, you can only relax out so far. And then monocularly, I know that some clinics go all the way to a -5. In our clinics, we would top out probably about a -3, a -3.5. And that is just so that we didn't cause over convergence. We didn't want to create a situation where we'd start to give them a little bit of a CE or an esophoric status, that because they're trying to accommodate so much that they bring their vergences in. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Okay. Here's a good point. When we're working with monocular, one of the things to think about as far as blur is that you need to have foveal alignment. So in this example, when you are right on that fovea, okay, right there, everything can be very clear, okay? But as you get off the fovea, things start getting blurrier and blurrier. So if you're doing monocular accommodative work, especially if you have somebody that has amblyopia and they have anomalous correspondence, or they're strabismic and they have eccentric fixation, talk with your doctor a little bit, because you may have to do some alignment activities to help them to know where to point their eye to get there aligned up, because they may not be able to clear, not because they can't flex and relax their accommodation, but they may not be able to clear because they're not able to foveally align centrally on the target that you're wanting to clear. So the next stage, going from monocular work, is we do what's called biocular. So you're going to have disassociated prisms, so one base down and one base up. And usually we'll use a small heart chart with this. And what it's going to do is, because they can't make vergence, right? They can't bring this into fusion, and one eye seeing one chart and one eye seeing the other chart, they're going to have two charts. Now, depending on what eye they focus through or look through, okay, they're either going to see, if they have a base down on the right eye, they're going to see the upper chart. If they have base up on the left eye, they're going to see the lower chart. And they're either going to make one chart clear or the other chart clear. They're not going to make both charts clear at the same time, okay? So as they're looking, let's say we're going to the top chart first. Are they able to get that clear? Are they able to see those letters? And then you're going to bounce to the opposite chart, okay? But in this activity, what you're wanting is, does one chart disappear? Does one chart fade away? Does one chart blur out to where they can't see it? Did they show any signs of suppressing one eye while they're looking through the other eye? Okay. And then as you're doing your flippers, okay, then they're going to have that suppression check, that as you put a minus lens in, if one of the charts goes away, you know automatically they're suppressing that eye. When they go into accommodation, because maybe it's too central, maybe it's too parvo, they're suppressing the other eye out. It's going to give you that feedback. Another way that you can do biocular activities is with the split spiral angle. Okay, so this vectogram, and usually you would use a light box, and you'd have a top chart and a bottom chart. Right eye, you're using the Polaroid glasses. Right eye sees one chart, left eye sees the other chart. Same activity. If they can clear the top one, the bottom one's probably going to be blurry. If they clear the top one or bottom one, then the top one's going to be blurry. Now we would set this up with Polaroid glasses, and then we'd add Janelli clips, okay? That way I could put a plus lens on their right eye and a minus lens on their left eye, so that when they were looking at the top chart, they were looking through plus. When they were looking through the minus chart, they were looking through our bottom chart, they were looking through minus. So now this is a great opportunity of which ones look bigger, which ones look smaller, which ones look farther away, which ones look closer. And I would just have them work their way through the chart, clearing the A, clearing the B, clearing the C, clearing the D, or adding, give me a word for each one, okay? Then as they work through, then I would swap, okay? So now the minus goes to the opposite eye, and they do the same thing. And then progressively raise the amount of diopters until with a plus or minus 2, they could go from top chart to bottom chart without suppressing the other chart, and be able to make those nice and clear, feel that flex, feel that relax, and kind of be able to localize where those letters felt like that they were looking at, okay? So split spiral angle is excellent for control. It's excellent to understand whether they're suppressing, and for them to really understand what their eye is doing, because they can feel that flex or relax as it comes into focus. They can really tell that. Okay, so those would be biocular activities. When we get to binocular, okay, now there is discussion. Okay, here we have our words. You can use a suppression check, which you need to do at the first, because we want to know, are they using both eyes all the time, or just one eye doing the work? So you can use red, green, okay, or you can use Polaroid, okay? If you're going to use a Polaroid bar reader, then you'd use Polaroid glasses. If you're going to use a red, green, okay, then you would use red, green glasses, okay? Now, most of you already know all this, okay? So if I'm using red, green, then if I'm not looking through the color correctly, these lines are gonna go black. And the way that I talk to him about it, I say, okay, Johnny, we're gonna put the words in jail, okay? So the bars always go up and down, just like in jail. They never go side to side like a fence row. So we're not putting them into a fence or a paddock, we're putting them in jail, okay? Now, after I told them that we've put them in jail, as they go to look through their glasses, I can ask them, is any of the bars dark? And if they say these green bars are dark, then I know they're suppressing. And I'm saying, okay, so now we're gonna help these words escape, okay? And the only way we help these words escape is if both eyes are on, so we can go through our, snapping, tapping, have them tap their feet. A lot of times opening their periphery will help them. I used to have a little ceramic elephant that I would sit on the side, and as you're looking down here, can you see Ellie the elephant as she's watching you do your activities? And so that they would open up that periphery, so that as you begin to add that flipper, okay, and they have that suppression check, you can see if when they accommodate, do they begin to suppress. Now, there's two things that you're looking for. One is true suppression, so that they put it on and one eye just turns off, they're not seeing through it. Or sometimes when you put that lens in, they become misaligned. So usually you'll find it when you put a minus lens in, they over converge. So instead of looking out all the way to the letters, they actually, because they're bringing their accommodation in, their convergence follows to where they're looking up here in space instead of all the way out here to the plane of regard, okay? All the way out here to the letters. So at that time, I give them a pointer or a pencil and I'll let them tap, okay? So if this is suppressed, okay, and they're trying to tap, get them to tap right on it. That way it'll cause them to bring that eye back out to where it needs to be, okay? So that they can align those eyes. So anytime that I'm doing binocular work, I'm looking for suppression, trying to make sure that they're getting their eyes all the way out to the page. And when they flex their accommodation, they're only flexing their accommodation. They're not actually converging their eyes, causing those bars to overlap and then suppress, okay? Flipper reading, all these different things, they go on for quite a while. You start low, plus minus 25, and just kind of work through. Plus minus 1 is a really good one for them to really conquer that feeling of flex and relax and knowing to keep their eyes where they're at, so that by the time you get to that plus minus 2, they're not over. Now, when I'm using red, green, or Polaroid, I don't usually ever go above a plus minus 2. Haven't found the need for that. You can discuss that with your doctor, okay? So we're just wanting to get that flexibility. We're just about out of time. So let's talk a little bit about BOP and BM. So base out with plus, BM is base in with minus. So what we're looking for, and I'll jump down to let's get sloppy, and I don't mean sloppy as far as sloppy work, but creating flexibility between the two systems, okay? So that when they accommodate, they don't naturally converge, right? Or over converge, because there's a little bit of a ratio there. Or when they converge or diverge, especially when they diverge, they don't just lose their accommodation and they can't control it. So base out with plus, it's going to stimulate convergence, because base out is convergence, everything's going to come in. But because we put that plus lens in, they're going to have to relax their accommodation. So you kind of have to understand what is called the point of regard, okay? So if you're doing vectograms, where those vectograms sit, okay, they are the point of regard. But if I put base out, the image is going to move forward. So now I have that stereopic, okay, that coits that's close to me, that's where their vergence is going to be. But in order to make that coits clear where it is in space, I have to accommodate back at the point of regard, okay? So that's that separation between the two, okay? So when I put a plus, I'm taking that accommodative load and moving it even farther back, but the vergence load is staying up here. So I'm creating a flexibility between the two. The same thing if I do base in, they're diverging, but I put that minus lens. I'm stimulating the accommodation so that they're able to pull that accommodative load in. Now you can do base out with plus with vectograms. You can also an ART, if you've ever used an aperture ruler trainer, I think that we've done a class on that. That is another one that's really good to use BOP and BM on, because now they can take that and feel where that image is, and at the same time they're clearing it and feel some of the difference between that. So create that flexibility, understand where that point of regard is, and then know in space that the vergence place and the accommodation place are two separate places, and so they have to address both of those simultaneously. Let's define success before we go. What should we expect from this accommodative system? One, they should be able to clear both near and far without pain or without symptoms of stress. So if they come in, they've had accommodative issues, they got accommodative dysfunction, maybe they got accommodative excess or accommodative spasm. By the time we're done, they should be able to look far, make things clear, and it doesn't hurt. They should be able to flex their accommodation and look at things near, and it doesn't hurt. Then we want good amplitude, okay? The amount that they can do. So they should be able to, Harmon's distance, they should be able to relax out a +2 or maybe even a +250, depending on the individual, and still be able to maintain clarity. They should also monocularly be able to accommodate in, a lot of people up to that -5. Some others, we would usually stop right around that -3 to 350. And binocularity to have that -2, that they can make that with that amplitude. Then good flexibility, bouncing back and forth without fatigue, not getting locked up or having spasms. And then one way that you can kind of check that flexibility is if you take a number 9 vectogram with a ±2, you're going to put Polaroid glasses on them. And then on that number 9, you can ask your doctor if you guys have one of these. They should be able to see 4 is one eye, 5 is both eyes, 6 is the other eye. So you can see which one suppresses and which one doesn't. They should be able to cycle out clear, 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 1 to 2 seconds, okay? No suppression, and try to get about 12 cycles per minute, okay? And then they should be able to sustain that for about 2 minutes. That's just a good accommodation system that they're able to hold that. They have that stamina, okay? Then you don't want a lot of overconvergence. You don't want the stimulation of vergence with accommodation. You want that separation, and that separation and vergence control is worked through BOP and BM. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. That's what we're hoping. Any questions or any comments that somebody would like to add in before we end in the session today?
No, I think this was great. Thank you. I'd love to see the first day. You said I could either email you or I could go on YouTube to find it.
Yeah, so if you want to email me at that, then I can send you a direct link and you can find the first one.
All right, will do.
All right. Everybody, thank you so much. I hope that you will just have enjoy your therapy sessions, and then may everybody have just a blessed holiday and a happy Christmas. All right.